The University of Sydney is so keen to get women into engineering, it has lowered the bar for entry for girls. As of next year, they will get 10 additional entry points to encourage them to apply. Is it a great initiative to tackle chronic underrepresentation of women in tech fields? Or is it a colossal blunder that insults women and casts a shadow over those who have made it on merit under the normal system? Well, let's discuss. My name's Mallen Baker. This is the Mallen Baker Show for Changemakers. Let's take it as read that everybody watching this video is passionately in favour of equal opportunities. There's no monopoly for any group on high performance or intelligence or hard work. The question is, how do you create a system that provides genuine equality of opportunity, and how do you know when you've got it? Well, that's easy, some people will say. You know you've got it when you have 50% men and 50% women in every job. Well, not so fast. Because if everyone gets to freely choose what they want to do, what happens if they don't actually want what you think they should want? In that case, equality of opportunity won't end up in a 50-50 split. And the question then becomes, how can you tell whether you have equal opportunity but people don't want the same thing, or whether you have a system that's throwing up concrete barriers to equality? You need to know the answer to that question, because otherwise you don't know if you have a problem to fix or not, and you don't know what you should do to fix it if you do. Let's look at this specific case. Currently in Australia, women represent just under 19% of engineering graduates, and there are just 13% in the industry. It's a pretty distinctive gap, no question. It seems as though, from what they say, the University of Technology Sydney sees this problem as being predominantly one of needing to inspire interest in women to apply. Its initiative isn't about changing institutions to tackle bias. It's not about retraining staff to get them to avoid bias in recruiting. According to Alicia Prince of Engineers Australia, it's about sending a strong message to women that they are welcome in the field. But of course, it does this by rigging the system to make it easier for women to get in. Well, I wonder. Because if I was a young woman contemplating that situation, which obviously I'm not, but I'm not totally devoid of empathy, I'd be thinking two things. One, lowering the bar to entry implies that the institution thinks women are less capable than men, and therefore allowances need to be made. Standards need to be reduced to cope with these less capable women. Well, that would make me feel pretty humiliated and insulted, I'm guessing. Two, if I went for that course, I'd be thinking that an awful lot of people would be assuming that I'd gotten there on the basis of preferential treatment, even if my scores are actually high enough that I would have gotten in on merit anyway. Neither of those two makes me feel very good, and frankly, neither of them really addresses the problem, if there even is one. Studies of British girls, and I don't see much reason why this would be very different for Australians, showed that the gender imbalance in engineering is associated with the subject choices girls make at school. While at secondary school there's no evidence of a gender gap in participation of science subjects, and girls are equally likely to achieve good scores in those subjects. Low take-up of the STEM subjects in higher education is not, according to those studies, tied to lower levels of attainment. While only 21% of the young people who go on to study physics are girls, those girls tend to achieve better exam results than the boys. More girls than boys do, however, go into biology. So why don't more choose to go into the STEM subjects? Here's what the gap looked like in 2013. According to studies, many girls have ruled themselves out of a career in engineering by the time they've reached the age of 14, describing it as interesting but not for me. Girls who define themselves as girly, in other words highly feminine, are least likely to be interested. That does leave a pool of girls who don't see themselves as girly, who are also highly academic, and some of them do go forward. But others get put off at that early stage by perceptions that STEM fields are a masculine thing. So if you want to inspire girls to see that engineering is potentially as a direction for them, you need to start by getting to them a lot younger to show them that it's an exciting industry where people like them can feel at home and thrive. Those girls that do become engineering students have been asked why they made that choice. The most frequently quoted reasons were the variety of options and routes that it gave them, and the fact that it could be a route to lots of other interesting careers. They believed that a greater awareness of what engineers do was needed, and that careers advice relating to engineering was generally poor. So that's a situation where you'd say that inspiring girls with better role models and information at an earlier age could make a real difference. And by the way, one of the most influential sources of career advice for girls are their parents. So there's another challenge for you. Of course, since girls perform just as well as boys in those subjects, the last thing you need to do in order to make that case is lower the standards for them. And in any case, it's more complicated than that. A study last year found that the problem wasn't that girls struggle to perform in relation to boys in science subjects, but that their general overperformance over boys tends to give them a wider range of options. The study of 475,000 teenagers found that while the achievement of boys and girls in STEM subjects was likely to be similar, those were the boys' best subject, making it more likely that they'd pursue it. The girls, however, even though they performed as well as the boys in science, were often likely to be better overall in reading comprehension, which related to higher ability in non-STEM subjects. So maybe if you're determined to fix the percentages, maybe you need to look at improving boys' performance in other areas as well. But of course, the starting question is really, do you actually need to? Beyond encouragement at an early age, is this a real problem or an apparent problem? The same study showed that girls just tended to exhibit a lower interest in STEM subjects across all countries, and particularly in those countries where there was the most gender equality, so they could choose what they liked without interference. And if a point of equal opportunities is that you can freely choose to do what you want, well, that's fine, isn't it? I mean, the study identified that there was a smaller percentage of girls for whom STEM was their best subject and yet still chose not to pursue it. That may be a group where targeted action to inspire interest will be effective. But even if you're successful, it's still going to be a minority. In any case, it's clear that fixing entry requirements for universities is singularly useless as well as insulting. Indeed, the history of higher educational institutions reducing standards for favoured groups in the name of diversity has got a pretty bad track record overall. If you pull people in on that basis, they tend then to struggle on the course and swell the ranks of those dropping out before completion. Studies of the effects of affirmative action in the States, for instance, have seen dropout rates twice as high for those that came in on affirmative action programs, which is obviously what you would expect if you let people in to high performance level courses who have never been able to achieve or sustain that level of performance in the past. It'd be like letting me in to play professional men's tennis on the basis that you have a quota for old gits. Well, how do you think I'm going to do?
Oh my goodness.
No need to dwell too much on the answer to that question. And even though performance isn't the issue, a German study showed that in any case, female students in STEM studies have a higher dropout rate than males. So the danger is that even if you've gone to great lengths to attract them in, they'll nevertheless conclude it's not for them and drop out anyway. This example is just the most ridiculous, reducing entry standards to attract a group, women, who don't perform less well in the first place. But even where we more often see the measure, which is the recent phenomenon of universities reducing entry standards for people from disadvantaged communities, it's just not the way to go about it. We don't want lower standards for our engineers and our scientists and every other profession. We want the early educational attainment for our young people to be lifted so they can proudly meet those standards and have it mean something. The Michaela School in the UK has demonstrated this year that this is completely achievable. It was set up to follow stricter and more ambitious standards in a deprived area. It became famous and vilified by some for being the so-called strictest school in the UK. Children not allowed to have mobile phones or other devices, walk silently between lessons, detention if you're even a minute late to school. But a lot more besides, which is also about the compassion and old-fashioned education values. Their first cohort just got their final exam results back and it massively outperformed standard schools, hands down. And that's a huge rebuke to those who say that disadvantaged communities should be given lower expectations and told they can still go into higher education because we'll give them a free pass. In some cases, literally a free pass. Oxford University has said it will offer a free year of study to disadvantaged students with lower grades. Is that really going to help? It's not surprising that they're doing such things. After all, in the UK, the university regulator has said that universities that fail to improve diversity will have their tuition fee limit slashed by a third, which is one of those stupid mechanisms guaranteed to produce perverse incentives. So basically, universities may be fully aware that they won't serve students from disadvantaged backgrounds well by reducing standards, but so long as they can show that they have a few more of them on campus than they otherwise would have done, they fend off financially damaging repercussions. It becomes a defensive win for the universities, a PR win for the regulator, and only a big fat lose for the students and their future employers. And you know, if you ask the students themselves, they agree that lowering standards just isn't the way to go. A survey of undergraduates showed 73% did not think that universities should drop entry requirements for disadvantaged students, but they should help them get better results earlier in the education system instead. So in summary, no, women not failing to enter STEM subjects because they're not as good, so you need to lower standards for them to get in. Go to young people, inspire them with the positives, and if you fail, maybe just accept there are actually some differences in what men and women choose to do, and so long as we check and make sure we're not throwing barriers in the way, maybe that's okay. Well, look, that's my take anyway, based on the evidence I've seen so far. Did I miss something? Got a different view? Let me know in the comments below.